Hello and welcome another edition of the College Coaches Corner, Corvive College Coaches Corner, where each Thursday I try to spend some time with college coaches and provide insight for parents, families, obviously student athletes. This week I am honored to be joined by 2023 and 2025 National Division I World Series champion, head coach Jay Johnson, LSU Tigers. Coach, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today.
You got it. Great to be with you again.
You know, I was trying to catch up with you a little bit at Columbus, but you were a wanted man. I would love for you to kind of start us by, after the 2023 season and now the 25 season leading into 26. You go into this season with kind of the proverbial bullseye on your back. What is that like each year, trying to get that next year's team to be prepared to become the hunted?
Yeah, I think there's two answers to it. The coach speak one is like, just turn the target around, you know what I mean? Or put the bow and arrow in your hand, so to speak. And we obviously want to do that. And I think it is relevant because that was last year's team that won the national championship. This is this year's team attacking a complete new opportunity. So that's the way that, we try to get them to think about it. And really, like, we try to impersonalize the opponent. I know that may sound really crazy, but it's baseball, and how we play is more important than who we play. And I think when you keep that kind of focus, it kind of keeps the focus off a team coming at you. And then the other layer of this is, like, at LSU, it's been that way for a long time. It's just one of those places, whether it's, LSU, Florida, Vanderbilt, it's just been that way for a long time. And so, I don't think we pay too much mind to it. Just try to focus on the things that are going to help us play good.
One of the areas that I would love to get parents and athletes in particular to understand is your coaching career, your playing career started off at that point. It was an NAIA school, Point Loma Nazarene in Southern California, which led into your, years and coaching career at Nevada, and then ultimately Arizona, and now LSU. Can you talk a little bit about being that student athlete, looking for that kind of that pathway into college athletics, and talking a little bit about what makes you a better coach today because of your beginnings at Point Loma?
Yeah, happy to talk about that. And I wouldn't be here today without making that decision to go there. And, I loved football. My dad was my football coach. Was probably a better football player than baseball player. And, there wasn't too many 5'7", 180-pound running backs running around the Pac-12 or the SEC. And he was like, hey, I know you want to do this, but you're in one piece. You're going to go do this. You're going to play baseball.
Right.
But I had to kind of learn how to play, and I had some really good coaches in junior college that really helped teach me the game of baseball, and kind of got an itch to coach. And so I wanted to go somewhere where I was going to play. Like, that was my number one criteria, was, do I have an opportunity to play? I mean, I feel like I probably could have gone to a Nevada, Arizona, somewhere out west and been on any Division I team, but wanted to really get in and compete. And, Point Loma is a great school. It stands for the right things, in line with my values and belief system, and thought I would have a good opportunity to play after junior college. And so that was solely what I based the decision on. And turned out to be the best decision of my life. I had a great college coach there in Scott Sarver, who eventually hired me as an assistant coach and got me going on this path. And so my advice always is, everybody loves an LSU or, the SEC or these top level schools, but my career got shaped literally because I made a decision, like, I want to go where I'm going to have a chance to get on the field and play.
I think that's just, in today's world, I think that's just tremendous insight information. And then on that, kind of moving forward, what are some of the biggest misconceptions? A lot of parents start thinking, oh, there's no room for the high school athlete, and, all of these portal and, name, image, and likeness. What are some of the biggest misconceptions that a lot of families and student athletes miss out on, that really they need to pay I would say a bigger focus on, as you just alluded to, the right fit for their student athlete in order to be a part of a bigger college experience, not only from an athletic perspective?
And that's a really good question. And there's a lot to that. I think in society today, a lot of it is internet driven, and not all things about the internet or social media are bad.
Right.
They're not. That's not what I'm saying. But I think, I try to guide the players to it, and we do this in coaching too. So this isn't like just a recruiting thing of, be substance over image or perception. What is the substance or the consequences of your decision making? Like I'll say, like a young high school athlete may want to commit to like an LSU, and part of it is like it makes them just feel better around walking around the hallways of their high school, and make them feel like they're more important than they are, where they haven't really like thought through the ramifications. Okay, when I'm there, is this really what's best for me? And so really focusing on your goals, like what do you want to accomplish? What's important to you? And then whatever the answer to that question is, there should be a program that can help you get there, to do that. Like I said, using my own personal experience, is I wanted to play. Like that was like the sole decision making based on why I chose to go to the place that I did. And, by sticking to what I thought was really important, it really helped me, beyond my playing career. So I think just focusing on the right things, and like having a criteria that is really important to you. Some people it's academics, some people it's, coaching staff. Some people it's, location. They want to go away from home. They want to be close to home. Just identifying that and identifying what things set you up for success, and then really try to stick to that.
One of the, I guess, red hot topics, especially whether we're in Columbus or at the ABCA, but, a lot of parents will try to track me down, and they feel like the transfer portal is like this heavy, wet blanket that just dampens their high school athletes' opportunities. And I try to get them to understand that all of college athletics, regardless of sport, has always been about the best athletes play. Those athletes that can execute play, whether you're a freshman. There is no label. When you're between the line, it's not you have a freshman first baseman, a senior center fielder. Can you explain a little bit about, although the portal is, a very prominent news story, it really is not the say-all be-all when it comes to recruiting, not only at LSU, but across all of college?
No doubt. I think it comes back to what we were just talking about, choosing the right place. If you look at a place and the entire roster is made up of junior and seniors, and that's been like historically what they've done, and that those are the guys that end up getting the playing time or, having the prominent roles, like it probably doesn't make a lot of sense for a young player to go there. Now there's exceptions to that, and you might like look at like our team. One of the things I love about our team is like it's a really good balance of how it's built. We had the National Freshman of the Year, Derek Carriel, obviously a special player. And Kason Evans, 1 or 1A, most important pitcher on a pitching staff, freshman, But we can also recruit that type of talent, so that doesn't mean it's the right thing for everybody. Pick the right place to start out with, pick it for substance, not of like maybe how it makes me feel or I feel better because I'm committed to this school. Well, how about this school has a need for what you're capable of doing, and is excited to have you. I've always thought, the way you're recruited should tell you a lot about the opportunity that you have. If somebody is, thinking about you every day, calling you, texting you, emailing you, writing you personal notes, like pretty good indication you're of value to them. I think sometimes players, like I said, they'll force decisions for the wrong reasons. And then you end up in one of those scenarios. There's nothing wrong with junior college baseball either. We'll always have a few junior college players on our team every year. A guy named Tanner Reeves right now, who was a great player at Blinn, a good player last year on a national championship team, really good player as a senior this year. Well, he wasn't ready to come to LSU, 3 or 4 years ago, but he worked hard, developed, got stronger, learned the game at a good program, and, is now having a great experience here.
One of the, kind of newer topics that is really at the forefront, especially when you're at a convention, is technology and the role that it plays, within college obviously college and professional athletics. Talk a little bit about how LSU, we hear things like pitching labs and, all of these metrics that are gathered through technology. What are some of the training tools now that you have available that maybe you didn't have when you were at, whether it was Nevada or Arizona, but now at LSU, you have this technology. How does it help your program become better?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm about like teaching and how do we make our players good learners. And so there's a couple elements of that. Anything you can use that can drive home the point that you're making and show it in a way that the player can understand it and then apply it to train it to develop so it becomes like a skill in the game. Like that's what you're after. And so I'm always paying attention first to what makes the player a good learner, what context are they receiving the coaching in. And so for some guys, I mean, I really need that. You know what I mean? It needed, several years ago, it was just video, to be able to show them. Now, with the analytics stuff and, the TrackMan, type data and stuff like that, like whether I'm trying to talk about a pitcher we're going to face and give the hitters a visual and speak in ways they can understand it better, helpful for that, or just pitching development. Hey, this is what this means. So this is what we need to do to make the adjustment so that you are, throwing the ball the way that we need to and want you to throw the ball. So for us, whether it's teaching or scouting, it is very valuable. And I actually feel like it's also a generation that these players that we're coaching now, this is all that they know, that they've grown up in it. And so like some of them, like they won't even want to hear what I have to say if I'm not attaching some of that, but also try to do it in a way where they understand like, hey, I've been saying this for 15 years. I'm just using this as a tool to help me get you to understand it better. And so I think it's great. And I think it's valuable if it's used properly. It still doesn't tell you a lot about the competitive nature of the makeup, the focus of the player. So you still have to coach and develop and recruit those things for these numbers things to really matter.
One of the important details that I try to share with parents when we're talking about the college experience, I always try to get them to understand the word balance. When you're playing in the SEC, you need balance. It can never be all about the baseball, and you can't make your identity about the baseball, especially in a city like Baton Rouge, with the crowd. How do you go about helping, especially the younger athletes or maybe athletes from a smaller community, understand, the proper balance of being a student athlete, not only within the SEC, but college athletics in general?
Yeah, I think it's really important. I've tried to get better through my whole career and kind of now like at this point where, my dad was a great coach, as I mentioned earlier, and he took me to football coaching clinics with him. And I got to hear, Lou Holtz speak when I'm like 11 and 12 years old. And he was right at the prime, and Notre Dame won that national championship with him. And, talked about, coaching is like helping people get what they want, and if you help enough people get what they want, you'll get anything that you want and achieve your goals. And so for me, it's like there's a bigger picture to this thing. School, like at this
Amen.
place, players come here to get to professional baseball. Like we don't run from that. We don't hide from that. That's the goal of every player in our program. And it's our job to facilitate that. And we spend a lot of time doing that. But when we talk about the school part of it, it's like, look, you may have come here for this, but this is really important over here because it's not just getting a degree. It's not just setting yourself up for a future, but life is paying good detail and attention to things that sometimes you don't always want to do. Like, and your ability to do that with good discipline and focus is going to determine your success as a father, as a husband, as a worker for somebody outside baseball when it's done. Because even at a place like this, all of our guys are going to have jobs outside of baseball at some point. There's only like very few Paul Skeens and Dylan Cruzes of the world, or Tommy White. There are very few of those guys. So they're all going to have a job. So by taking things you don't want to do and applying really good work ethic, discipline, focus, motivation to that, it's going to make you successful in life. And then on top of that, you need a degree, you know what I mean? And you need to build a network. And so that has to be paid attention to. And so we don't run from like, hey, at this place, we're trying to help guys achieve their dream of being major leaguers. But this is also really important, and strive for that balance.
One of the things, particularly in the SEC, I can speak to this point, but now knowing your background with regard to football and your dad being a coach, very similar to Tyler, talk about the need for young athletes or all athletes at all levels of college baseball, the requirement of mental toughness. We hear about physically impacting a baseball and pitch velocity and all speed metrics, but we very rarely dive down that rabbit hole of, hey, this is hard, and the expectation will get you and wear you down. Mental toughness and the role that it plays within your coaching philosophies.
Yeah, it's everything, and it's a lifelong journey as a coach too. And I'm the one like on the dugout step. I'm not executing the pitch, or I haven't got any hits for LSU yet. But like, I have to manage myself, and try to live by this. Like, hey, if I want my team to be more mentally tough, then I need to be more mentally tough. If I want my team to have great body language, then I need to have great body language. But that's the game. And, I think building confidence is the most important skill like we can give our players, because confidence gets you through the small setbacks, the adversity, they're happening every game in baseball. Like, they're happening every game. And when a player and a team has confidence, just small things don't bother them. They're able to move on to the next pitch. And, baseball game often is decided by 5 or 6 or 7 pitches throughout the course of the game. And so we want to be in our best focus, our best plan for those pitches when they come along. And if you're, concerned about the future, frustrated with the past, you're not competing in the moment. And that's when you're kind of letting the team down and the program down and yourself down by not giving your best. And that has everything to do with this and nothing to do with a skill set or a number. And so I get asked about last year's team all the time. And the thing I am most proud of is the mental toughness of the team. And we didn't have like this. We had one weekend where we got beat by a really good Auburn team, in 3 really close games. But other than that, they played very consistently. And to me, that was the sign of the mental toughness. Like, win, lose, streak, Omaha, it did not matter. They just kept executing their plan. And to me, they're the most mentally tough team I've ever seen, because it very rarely wavered.
Well, on that note, I want to kind of take it to that next step. You and I had been talking a little bit prior to starting, and I talked about one of the things that really catches my eye with regard to LSU baseball is their precision, their execution. It's consistent. It's very, very steady. And I assume that comes from team culture, the culture that you bring with you, the energy, the education component. Talk about the importance for you and obviously your staff with regard to building that culture that year in and year out just kind of takes care of itself. It's not something you have to speak about. It's just something that you have started as a foundation within the LSU baseball program.
I really appreciate you saying that. First off, identifying like what we want to be known for and laying that out. And then, there's the program element, and then there's every team is different element. So the program thing, like, it's very clear. It's fundamentals, and I really liked your word of precision, doing really common things in an uncommon way, whether that's throwing strikes, controlling the baseball on defense, controlling the strike zone on offense. Like, let's be exceptional at those really, really common things. The second element of compete, like, I never want it to feel like it's more important to our opponent than it is to us. And that comes through with how they play. And then character of just like decision making. Like, can we just be a group of men that make really good decisions all the time? Is this the right thing to do? Is it not the right thing to do? On the field, off the field. So that's kind of like the hallmark of or the foundation of what we will always want to be known for and be about. And then every team has different challenges, like last year, like you talked about mental toughness. Well, our motto for the year last year was tough and together. And the toughness meant mental toughness and togetherness of always place the needs of the team above your own. And so like, that's what we're validating ourselves from, is those program values and those team values. This year it's about, letting go of last year, you know what I mean? It being all in on right now. And then the things that we need to do that. And so like letting those be known, expected, and then accountability is really important. And it's not yelling or screaming or throwing anybody up against the locker, but it's like, no, it's like, okay, we need this out of you. So that is very clear. So each player has their own expectation and standard, and then holding them to that. But then more importantly, I like to try to catch them doing it right too. So if there's something that showed great leadership from Stephen Milam, our shortstop, and I've really wanted him to grow in that regard, because nobody has more experience playing shortstop in college baseball than him right now. Like, I'll do that. Like, for instance, in practice the other day, we were doing a defensive drill where a lot of things can be happening at one time. And I mean, it's like, we look like we're in midseason form as a team, just simply because he is communicating at an elite level and showing great leadership. So, I always want to praise players when I see them doing the things that we want them to do.
My last question, Jay, and I really appreciate you taking the time to answer these questions. And my last question is, I would love for you to share, from a coaching perspective, insight for the younger athletes in high school that are, the freshmen, sophomore, juniors, and they feel like nobody's seeing me. How do I get exposure? What should they be truly focused on during those 3 years of question, just to help them prepare to become a college athlete?
That's a great question. And I love talking about this. And again, It goes back to that, like, image versus substance, like, focus on improvement, focus on development, focusing on making you and yourself and your game and your skills the best that they can possibly be. And almost to the point where you're like surrendering like the outcome of things that you cannot control, which is, hey man, we try to know everybody, but our coaching staff may not see you. That doesn't mean you're not a good player. It just may not work out that way. I mentioned, Tanner Reeves, like, I have several old players on our team right now that have gotten bypassed in the draft, like not once, not twice, but like 3 times, but they're focusing on what that next step is for them. So it's a different level, but it's the same thing, because all our guys want to go to pro baseball. Like, everybody gets so caught up in the end goal, or I will just call it the commitment, or the college they're going to go to. Like, well, how about being a really good player on your high school team, or your travel team, or getting stronger, or because it's really hard for any of us college coaches, if you're not doing that there, to think like you'll be able to do it here. I mean, there's a lot made of Indiana football right now. They just won the national championship, and Coach Signetti did a great job, but I've heard him say it 1 billion times this year. I've kind of been captivated by what they were accomplishing, but like, studying production over potential, and well, to produce, you have to build a skill set, and a lot of us sometimes will get caught up in the potential thing, where just be a good player on your high school team first, and I think if you do that, and you can really be disciplined in your thoughts, like, that builds mental toughness too, right? Hey, man, I can't control what these people think of me, but I can control my attitude, my concentration, and my effort on a daily basis.
Amen. Well, I, for one, am extremely grateful. I really, truly enjoy the times that we do get to catch up, and I appreciate you taking the time to join me today to share such great information with families and student athletes.
You got it. Always enjoy being on with you.
Athletes, electrolytes matter, but you got to choose the right electrolytes. If you look at the sugars, 34 grams, the dyes, all the things that's not good for you in this product, this is a hype product. If you look here at the electrolytes made by Beede, that's got the right amount of magnesium, sodium, potassium, zinc, kosher salt. It's got vitamin C to help with the immune system. I'm telling you, if you want to stay on the field, you want to perform at your best, you want to recover well, this is the product that you need to choose.